You know what? Where is our? There we go.
Here we go, he says. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Live here on Maine Deer Hunters. Daniel and I are here tonight with our guest, Amy Blanchette, and we're going to talk taxidermy. Hi, Amy. How are you?
I'm good, and yourself?
I'm very good. Thanks for joining us. Let's start right off. Tell us about Amy Blanchette, who you are, how you, and then we'll get to how you get into taxidermy.
Well, I'm a taxidermist in Litchfield, Maine. I worked in trucking for 4 years, and I would get a winter license every year during the winter months. So I was looking for something to do during my winter layoff. So I decided to go to taxidermy school. I went up to Montana for a month, and I was able to use my GI Bill to cover all the expenses. I decided if, it'd be an adventure. If I liked it, awesome. If I won't have help. And here I am. I went full time last year, and I love it.
And your business is called what?
Wicked Critters Taxidermy
And you're located
in Litchfield, Maine.
Litchfield. Okay, right in central Maine. Good deer country, among other things.
Yeah.
So, I see a deer head in the background, and I also see a raccoon. What and a bear? What do you do? Do you cover the gamut? Do you do mammals? Do you do birds?
I only do mammals at this time. I did want to get into birds and fish, but with just doing mammals, I stay so busy with that. I don't think I'll ever venture down to birds.
All right. So, you mentioned we talked a little bit beforehand. You were doing this part time, but now you think you've perfected the craft enough to do it full time. This is something that's always intrigued me. I've always thought, but the last thing I need is another hobby. But I've always thought it would be a fun thing to do because you're turning a pile of fur and a set of antlers into a work of art and something that looks realistic. How do you do it? How do you take that pile of fur and that clump of antlers and turn it into something that looks like it's about to jump out of the wall?
Well, when somebody drops the deer off, usually the head's still in it, so it has to be cut out. Then it has to be split. I put it on my board and split some of the meat and fat off of it. And then the eyes, lips, nose, ears, everything has to be turned into itself. Lips are kind of folded over. Then you have to butterfly it and then use all that. And then I sew them. And they go to the tannery. Then when I get it back, I then thin everything out, the eyes, ears, and nose. And then prep your form. It's like with all the up and babysit it for 2 days while everything is drying. Do your finished work.
Now you mentioned sending out to the tannery, and I have a vague familiarity with taxidermy. I know there's different techniques, but from what I understand, it's better to send it off to a professional tanner. Some people use process like pickle tanning or something, but if you send it off to a professional, you're going to get the original hide back in good shape. Is that true?
Yes, yes. Everything gets a number when it comes in. So the antlers have the same number as the hide. I actually use a cattle tag to tag the ears. It goes right on the cargo, so everything. I know who wants to who.
Yeah, record keeping is important. I've heard some horror stories about the antlers getting lost and capes getting lost and that sort of thing. Um, oh gosh, what? I mean, let's say I'm a hunter. I shoot the deer of a lifetime, and I want to get it mounted. And I'm sure you've seen some horrible cases, and the average sportsman in the woods doesn't know what to do, and they make mistakes just out of sheer ignorance. What I've just killed a deer. What are some of the steps that I can take to make sure that what I see laying there on the ground is gonna the final product is gonna look close to that?
I get a lot of deer in that have drag marks that always puts the fur so it doesn't look as nice once it's mounted up. And it's something that's really hard to fix. So try not to drag if you can, or like use a split or something to drag it out of the wood if you're able to. Another thing is when people pack the deer full of ice and hang it upside down, all that ice ends up melting, goes down to the head of the deer and flows right up. It can cause bacteria buildup, which will end up causing slippage later on the road. The best thing to do is just get the taxidermist as fast as you can.
Okay, yeah, that's good. That's really good advice. Get it to the taxidermist as fast as you can. Don't drag it. What about cutting? When you field dressing the deer, where should you stop?
Below the brisket. I do get some deer in that are cut all the way up the brisket. It can be fixed, but sometimes we get some pet subs that come in and it just makes it a lot more work to be able to complete it.
Yeah, as the taxidermists say, the first hole is free, but after that, it costs money. And obviously, this if you shoot it high up, there's nothing you can do. So, I've seen taxidermists work wonders, and I'm sure you can fix a bullet hole, maybe a small arrow wound, but don't drag it. What about I don't know. I'm trying to think of some of the things that people do that make mistakes when you're skinning. Obviously, if you're gonna, would you prefer that they bring it to you unskinned or caped by a meat process? Let's say they bring it to a processor.
If they bring it to a processor, they generally do so many people a good job. People that tend to process deer themselves are the ones I have issues with. I don't get enough tape, or they leave the whole neck inside the deer.
Yeah, so it's kind of leave enough extra. Now, if I were going to do it myself, and don't obviously up to the brisket and no more. How far back on the shoulders and along the back?
If you're going down the back, sometimes I get a cut all the way up the back. That's probably as much practice there. Work with what I get.
Yeah, so
But try cutting off and underneath the skin, put an angle so nothing touches the fur. Touch the fur, it's harder to find.
yeah, so if you don't know what you're doing, leave plenty of extra. Don't make any unnecessary cuts.
taxidermist.
Yeah, and I assume for small mammals like the raccoon there that's in the background, just bring it in whole. And obviously you do, well, maybe it's not obvious. You do shoulder mounts, you do full body mounts, you do European skull mounts, everything.
Yeah. With my
Uh,
small game though, I hand those in house. My turnaround time is a little bit faster, so all big games sense with that. All right.
for a, let's say for a fur bearer, um, they may need to have a tag. Is that correct? For like a, if let's say somebody wanted a coyote pelt, do they need to get that tagged first before they bring it in?
If it's getting mounted up to myself, but it's on like the wall finger, like it's right.
All right. What about let's see? Any recommendations about? I mean, when it comes to choosing what type of a mount they get. Let's say it's a deer and it's a shoulder mount. Um, you have a bunch of options available: left, right, up, down, that sort of thing.
Yes. I guess it would be more personal preference. Uh, I prefer something like a semi-seat with a head turn. Uh, definitely like the offset shoulders and gives that little bit extra and just look sharp. Or even a wall pedestal is really nice. I usually let my clients look at my catalog or different pictures and stuff so they can decide what they want.
Yeah, I've always tried to as much as possible match it to maybe the situation, but I do like that semi sneak a lot. Um, it all depends on what your preference is and what your limitations are. If you have a low ceiling, maybe a full sneak is a better option.
Yeah.
And you can do it all.
There's a lot more options than people are aware of. Say
Yeah.
a deer has an injury they want to kind of hide, so they'll choose their pose based on that, and we'll try to make it so it's not as obvious, so it wouldn't be on the show side.
What I'm going to challenge you a little bit now. If somebody's on the fence, I don't know, do I want this mounted or not? What would you say as far as advice? You know, just and I'm not sure what I'm getting at, but you know, first deer that may be obvious. Um, yes or no? What would you suggest to people?
If they wanted to get it mounted or not,
Yeah, how do you decide if it's one of those you're on the fence?
well, if I have somebody that's on the fence, sometimes a shoulder mount might not be in their price range. They'll offer other things like a Euro mount or an antler plaque or something. Um, I can work out payment methods with people if they have that situation. As long as they communicate with me, I'm okay with that.
Yeah. How do you do your European mount?
I've done different methods. I've simmered them. I've done macerations. I do not have beetles. I do have a girl that works with me that I put her in charge of the Europeans. She tried the beetle thing out, but this didn't work. So we've been macerating and simmering.
All right. Well, I may want to talk to you online about or offline about that. I haven't had much success in anything that I've ventured, so I'm really curious to hear. And I'm not trying to take business away, but a lot of people want to do the DIY thing, and I just never have been very successful at it. I simmer, I don't boil, but the bones still fall apart, and I have a hard time getting the darkness out of the bones. I add a little bleach. I add a little hydrogen peroxide. Um, and again, not trying to take business away, but what's the secret?
What's the secret? Definitely recommend macerating over boiling. It won't make the bone as brittle. It's just with maceration, all you do is you put it in a bucket of water with a fish tank heater, and so you want the heater to be up high, so 90 plus degrees, and the bacteria will build up and it'll eat all the meat off. You do definitely want to skin it first and keep off as much meat as you can before you attempt the maceration. And then once it's all clean, you just clean it off. Always, when you spray it off with the hose or a pressure washer, avoid the nasal cavity because there's a lot of brittle bone in there that you can easily with any high pressure water, and it looks sharp to keep that like brittle bone in there. Once you do that, there's continued grease. There's different ways to do that, and then I use a high peroxide, like 40% peroxide solution mixed with water to clean them, and then I end up using hair bleach and wrapping it around to get that clean. And always wrap the antlers first because the fleece is extremely good.
Okay, well, it sounds complicated enough that it's probably just easier to bring it to you.
There's lots of videos online and a bunch of information, and it's just kind of a trial and error to successful at it.
All right, well, let's shift gears a little bit, and I'm going to turn it over to Daniel because we have an exciting announcement to make.
Absolutely. Bob, thank you so much. Amy, thank you so much for coming on. We're really happy to have you on. And actually, I'm gonna let you talk about the announcement that you have, and then we'll let everybody know how that they can get involved.
Okay. Every year I donate a mount, and this year I'm teaming up with the Maine Deer Hunters group, and all the proceeds to the mount, the winner of the mount, will go towards the Maine Lifetime Hunting Program.
Yeah. That we can't thank you enough for that, Amy. You actually did this with us 3 years ago, and we've been very, very anxious to have you come back and come on live with us. And the fact that you would do this again with us is just it's amazing. Thank you so much. And like Amy said, this is going to go to our youth lifetime license program, where we will probably end up doing a raffle to donate the proceeds to purchase youth combo hunting and fishing licenses and donate them to youth here in Maine. So, Amy, thank you so much for that. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely happy to do it.
Thank you. Now, I'm gonna ask you a couple of questions. Now, I understand you just do mammals. What is your absolute favorite mammal to do?
I would have to say bobcat. I do love anything more exotic that you don't see as often. I love, like, I have a hyena in my shop that I do with my mentor, Art Beta. And when I have clients come in with their children, they're usually just taken back by it. And I love educating people on species. I would love to have more exotic animals in here. And something I do eventually want to get into is recreation, where a recreation is where you just take parts from one animal and make a completely different animal from those parts. Say you want to make there's a great taxidermist out in Canada, and he's known for his recreation. He made a giant panda out of black bear hide, and I've seen red pandas made, Maine wolves. I think the challenge of it would be awesome. It's something I'd really like to get into today. this one I get some free time, which I really don't get much of.
So, it's funny that you said bobcat because I've just kind of been amazed at some of the work that you've done with bobcat and how you've really been able to capture the eye. And I understand capturing that eye is one of the most difficult things that there is.
That's also what I've been told. So when I started taxidermy, it was one of the things that I really wanted to practice on the most. That I think it's one of the most difficult. So I ended up taking a class with Amy Carter down in North Carolina, who's known for her bobcat. And I've mounted my very first bobcat with her. And I think I've mounted about 20 since then. I love the challenge of them, and they're such a beautiful animal. They're all muscle. They're amazing.
Well, you've just said a couple things that have really impressed me that maybe other folks have not picked up on. One is just the bobcat, because it's a very thin-skinned animal and it's very difficult to work with. So if you can master that, then it seems to me that the rest is easy. And also, you mentioned your mentor, Art Feta, who is he does all my work, and I'm extremely fussy. I have a lot of mounts, and I'm very particular about who touches my stuff. So if you work under Art, then I'm sure that your work is first class. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely.
He's a good man. He's taught me a lot.
Yeah, he's done everything. He's done just about everything from elephants and rhinos to I know he's a waterfowl fanatic, but when it comes to deer, it's almost he does it in his sleep and with his eyes closed, and still, I mean, he's award winning. And I noticed in the intro, did I see a red ribbon on something?
Yes, I competed in my first taxidermy competition last year. I had 4 entries, and I took 2 first place and 2 second place. I entered the hyena that I met with Art Beta, and we ended up taking first place in the collective artist. Well, not collective artist. We took first place with the hyena, but then we also got an award for being first place in the collective artist category. And then I did a bobcat with a squirrel in its mouth. I was actually mounted it as a demo piece for LL Bean. I sometimes go to their store and mount things for people to see and just do displays. And it wasn't supposed to be a competition piece, but I entered it just to see how it would do, and it took second place. I did a baby bobcat as well, which also took second place. And I ended up donating that to Do Haven Animal Kingdom.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are there, you'll happen to see that. And I actually have a mount I'll be dropping off there tomorrow as well. And then my 4th piece was a marten. It was my very first marten I ever did, and I took first place with that. And I also got the Maine Trappers Association award for it.
So those are some pretty impressive creds, for sure.
Yeah. I was quite excited. I think I would do so well my first time, but I don't go there to get ribbons. I go there to learn more. The judges, they go around and they'll critique your work, and it helps you improve. And I look forward to doing those competitions and learning that much more. They have seminars at the competitions, and you get to meet other taxidermists and learn from them as well.
Yeah, well, obviously, I mean, it sounds like you're just starting out, but it's clicked for you for sure. I had a question right there on the tip of my tongue, but it went away. What is what's the most difficult animal that you've done that you've mounted so far?
Difficult. I think they all have their difficulties at times. I want to say probably a red fox. I haven't mounted a red fox yet that I've been happy with. I'm never 100% happy with any of my mounts. There's always room for improvement, and I always strive to do better on my next mount. I think maybe the hyena was probably the most challenging. The short fur and animals that I never worked on before, and other reasons. It was difficult, and then working with art sometimes,
Yeah, yep, I can appreciate that. When you do a mount, do the people, do they ever bring in reference photos? And if so, does it help?
Usually the reference photos that you get is of a deceased animal, so it doesn't really help if a tine gets broken off after the photo. It helps me rebuild that tine or something like that. But no, deceased. Sometimes I get photos of other mounts that they've had done in the past. They want their animal to be mounted just like that one. So that's helpful, so I know exactly which pose to go with.
Yeah.
But with just pictures of deceased animals, I'm trying to make the animal look alive. So it's no.
Okay, so you brought up an important point because we talked about holes in the fur, but things happen in the field. I mean, maybe who knows why, but an antler gets shot off or broken in transport or whatever. But you can fix that.
Yeah, I had a gentleman that tried doing his own European, and he ended up just leaving it outside for a long time, and it was chewed on by squirrels, mice, and tines were missing, and it was in really rough shape. But he had a picture of the animal when he shot it, so I was able to recreate all those tines.
Okay, so continuing with that theme, I just recently had a mule deer fall off the wall and land terribly. Does that require? Obviously, it depends on the amount of damage, but I mean, can that be salvaged, or does it mean start from scratch, pull everything off? Is there a way to fix it?
Did the tines break or the bone shatter?
The tines broke and the skull plate broke in half and came out, so the hide was ripped.
The tines can be fixed. The bone, I'd have to be able to see it to see what I was working with. I did have a gentleman bring in a European that he wanted done, and the butcher thought he was getting it mounted, but he cut the antlers off of it, the skull plate, and he wanted it reattached, and I was able to fix that for him. He had all the pieces.
And what about, you have the grandpa's mount, or you find a mount that's been in the barn for 50, 60 years. I mean, is it just a matter of getting a cape and remounting it? And do you have extra capes?
I do have some extra capes just in case of a situation like that. I'm able to acquire more if needed. Definitely go off the measurements of what is still existing, the one size cape I would need. Some people don't want a whole brand new hide. They want to try salvaging what's there. So, depending on the condition of it, you could just touch it up and make it look good.
So you can all of the above. You can do anything depending on what the customer wants.
It's something you would have to see and then decide from there.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit more about, you have a mount and it's peak rut. That thing is just swollen right up. When you take the hide off, or the butcher takes the hide off, how do you determine what size form to use when you mount the deer?
I usually, when I get it in, I'll take my eye to nose measurement with the skull still in place. so I have that measurement. And then once the hide comes back is when I get my neck measurement and other measurements.
So you can take measurements and you can come fairly close to the actual size of that deer.
Yeah.
Do you get much out of state work, like people that bring deer in from, say, Texas or Alabama or Mississippi or?
I do have a few clients that like to go out of state and hunt. I seem to get a lot of people from Massachusetts that come up here to hunt, and they look for taxidermists in Maine instead of bringing it back to Massachusetts with them.
So you get a few where, I mean, a 4.5-year-old deer in Alabama is going to have very different dimensions than even a 3-year-old deer in Maine.
Yeah.
But you can make it look like it did when it was alive.
Yeah.
How do you do that? What's the art? And I'm thinking about things like the eyes and the nose, the fleshy parts. We not to get too personal, but when my mother-in-law used to visit, she would sleep in the guest room with some of my deer mounts, and she couldn't sleep there because she felt like she had eyes watching her all night long, which was not a bad thing. But how do you make that thing come to life?
Lots of practice. Reference photos are huge. I look at live reference photos, and I try basing my colors off of that, and just eye shape. I mean, there's so many, depending on what look you're going for. If you want an aggressive deer, your eyes are going to be one way. A deer that's more relaxed, the eyes are a different way. So just the reference photos is huge.
Yeah, and it really does make a difference. I've seen some really good work, and I've seen some really bad work, and it shows up. It becomes very obvious when somebody has, when they don't know what they're doing or they didn't put the proper attention to it. And we take it for granted when we see a good mount. We just say, "Oh yeah, that looks like a deer," but obviously a lot goes into the eyelids and the painting around the flesh of the eyes and the nose. And especially when you get into things like, let's talk about bears for a minute, because you have to. I want to have a bear done open mouth. Do you use a form and an inset? Do you use the skull for the teeth?
It's a reproduction mouth that I use. I keep the actual gums in the bear, but you can buy a reproduction gum that the whole jaw set with the gums and everything. You just kind of mold the skin into it. But I keep what's actually there and work with that. All of us taxidermists have different methods, and I'm sure Art could tell you that as well. He has certain ways of doing things, and I have my ways of doing things. But I have learned some of his methods, and I do utilize them. But that's a reproduction. The real jaw is not kept. So if the client did want to keep the skull, they would be able to do that as well.
Okay, well, that's good to know because a lot of people save the skull as a trophy, and I know Art would say, and I would agree with him. I've never seen a bear with his mouth open and is baring his teeth anyway, so it's kind of an artificial mount. But if that's what you want, then more power to you. I don't know. I'm out of questions, Daniel. I'm going to throw it back.
Let's try and help some hunters out. They've just taken their deer and they're definitely going to bring it in to get it mounted. What is your biggest pet peeve that a hunter does before dropping their mount off to you?
I think it would be when they bring the whole neck. I had one guy bring his deer. It was butchered. There wasn't enough cape on it, and the whole neck, even some of the chest, was still in it. It was heavy, hard to work with. But it was his son's first deer, So I'm going to do everything I can to give him the best mount possible. It's going to be a lot of work.
So, and on that same vein, what is the one thing that you would like to tell all hunters right now that are considering having a mount done? What is the one thing that you want them to know?
Take care of the hide. Protect it as best as you can, so that way you can get the best results possible.
Yep, and Bob and I we've talked a lot about in our live feeds. A lot of care that goes into field dressing and everything just ultimately leads to the best product, no matter whether it's a mount or whether it's your processed meat. But it's taking care of that animal in the field in the proper way, and especially if they're going to bring it to somebody like you, Amy, and have it mounted up. They want to make sure that they bring it to you as best they possibly can.
Yeah, absolutely. And get it to me as fast as possible, so the bacteria you don't have to worry about slippage.
Yeah.
Now, No, go ahead, Bob.
That carries over into right from the get-go. I mean, it makes sense. You want to take good pictures in the field, so clean that thing up. We carry sanitary wipes with us in our fanny pack, and wipe off the blood, clean up the blood around the mouth, the eyes, if there isn't, the nose. Clean it up good for a picture, and that's going to help you because you remove all that nasty stuff, and there's less chance for bacteria to degenerate, and especially the soft tissue, which is going to be a problem for you.
Yeah.
So, Amy, where can folks find you? Are you on Facebook?
Yes, I'm only on Facebook right now. I don't have a
Okay,
yet. Sure, if I will.
And that's it. Wicked Critters Taxidermy on Facebook, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Fantastic. Do you have messenger capability through that Facebook app? Can they message you?
Yeah.
Great. So I think Bob, if you don't have anything else, I think we're gonna wrap it up for tonight. We'll let Amy have the rest of the night.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate. Thank you very much, Amy. First, for being with us, and second, for your willingness and your generosity to donate a mount. I assume this is a deer mount.
Yes,
and
deer show.
We're gonna roll out a raffle, all the proceeds of which will go towards our lifetime license fund. So, whether it's your kid that you want to get the license for, or their first deer, or grandpa's last deer, or just a heck of a trophy, you're going to want to stay tuned to Maine Deer Hunters as soon as we announce how we're going to go about actually doing this. But this is a full shoulder deer mount. We'll be raffling off. Amy has generously donated to the Maine Deer Hunters Lifetime License Fund. Again, thank you very much, and thanks for being with us.
Absolutely. And again, I reiterate what Bob said. Thank you so much. It was an absolute pleasure to have you on. And with that, Bob, thank you so much.
My pleasure, as always.
Amy, thank you so much. And we hope everybody has a great evening until we see everybody next time. I think the next guest, if I can arrange to have him on, is going to be Corporal Dave Chabot of the Maine Warden Service, and we are going to do a piece on landowner relations.
Awesome.
Outstanding. Well, thank you so much, both of you. Have a great night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Yeah. Bye.